Are you overwhelmed by the challenge of personalizing communication for thousands of students? That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. From nudging prospective students to guiding those already on their journey, AI assistants don't just automate. They write, build, and optimize every step of your digital campaigns. Discover how at element451.com/AI team. I've tried to shift my mindset to decisions are iterative. And now that I've taken that approach, right, it allows me to do decision making as like more a series of these small winnable games.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your Monday morning energizer covering insights and trends in higher ed marketing and enrollment. I'm Mallory Wilsey, bringing over 15 years of ed tech and marketing expertise to your earbuds.
And I'm Seth Odell, joining the Pulse with my own adventures from leading marketing at top universities to founding Kanahoma, one of the industry's fastest growing digital marketing agencies.
Each week, we bring you the kind of insider insights you typically only find over cocktails with your pals at a conference.
It's fast, it's fun, and it's designed for you, the busy higher ed professional.
You're not just listening to another podcast.
You're checking the pulse of higher education.
Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 39 of the Higher Ed Pulse. I am your co-host, Seth Odell, joined as always by the incredible Mallory. Mallory, how are you?
I'm good. I am starting to think about my outfits for next week and like what fun manicure I'm going to go get before I leave for Vegas.
Yeah. Well, I shared with you, obviously right before we hit record, but I'll share with folks, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make AMA this year as planned. I got some health stuff going on in the family and I need to be on the home front helping as much as I can with Lola. And so just want to say the folks at AMA were so understanding, and it was just a reminder to me of like how gracious everybody is in the industry, that like when you say I need to focus on family, everybody jumps at the chance. So I will miss everybody at AMA, but I will be FOMOing in the background and following hashtags and posts online vigorously as they come.
I will blow your phone up with photos of selfies and hot tips and things that are being said at the conference. Do not worry. It'll be like you're there. You'll be so
Perfect. I'll be ready. I'm going to be phone at my side ready. That sounds fantastic.
We are going to miss you, Seth. But you know what? I think it is a sign of your own resilience and leadership qualities that you're able to make a challenging decision like this, because I'm sure it wasn't an easy one for you. Because I know that you're going to be pretty involved with the conference this year. So I know those decisions do not happen lightly. And actually today, folks, we're going to dive into a topic that I think Seth and I feel couldn't be more relevant given everything that's happening right now. And that topic is building resilience as leaders in times of uncertainty. So I'll just start off by saying, leadership is tough. Like, let's just say it out loud. Like, it's tough. It can be lonely. And that's whether you're running a department, leading a big team, or maybe even making big decisions for your institution. The world around us is just getting more and more unpredictable. And tomorrow's election day. Regardless of the outcome, the reality is that as higher ed leaders, we're going to be left facing the ongoing pressures of a divided and uncertain landscape. And the stakes feel really high right now. The expectations feel endless, and there's just an overwhelming sense of needing to be right and in control all of the time, or at least that's at least how I've been feeling. And so Seth, today we're going to talk about mental toughness and what it means to be a resilient leader when so many things are out of our control, and how we can keep our teams grounded when maybe we ourselves are feeling overwhelmed. And so, you guys know, Seth and I are not here to shy away from these tough conversations.
Yeah.
So let's unpack it, Seth. Like, with so much unpredictability out there right now, what can leaders do? What's the opportunity?
I think everything you said is spot on, right? I mean, the world's increasingly divisive, uncertain, it's loud, it's noisy. Leadership is really lonely, especially for those folks in marketing or admissions, because you don't really have peers at the leadership level. And so you sort of have to put on a brave face for your boss and for your team, and your peers don't totally understand exactly what you're up against. And so it can feel isolating. And then when you factor in, broader situations and what's going on in the broader landscape, it's a lot. I will say, the first area I think is awareness, predates action. I have a great personal coach that I work with who always celebrates when I'm aware of something. And so even just how I'm feeling or what's going on, he's like, that's great. He's like, you have to be aware of something and see it before you can, he always says you have to see it before you can solve it. And so I think, the first and foremost is making space for how stressful and challenging the time is and how we're all handling things differently. And it may depend on the size of your team or maybe the culture within your organization or the challenges you're facing. But first is are we able to self-reflect and be aware of how we're feeling and what we're up against? That's the first place before you can even be resilient, is being aware of where you're starting from, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think not just being aware of how you are feeling, but also where your team is, right? I think a lot of folks listening to our podcast manage teams, and there's this balance of empathy for the team while also managing your own stress and awareness of things. And sometimes you have to put the needs of your team first, but I've experienced this. There was a job that I was in a few years ago where I felt like I was constantly at burnout because I was taking on so many of the emotions of my teams. And granted, that was during the pandemic times and there was a lot of emotion and challenge. Yeah. But it was, in reflection, it was absolutely at the detriment to my personal well-being. And then I stopped showing up for my team in the best ways because I was over-identifying with their struggles and losing sight of boundaries. Yeah, totally. And I think that realizing how we're showing up is so key, and how can we show up in the way that we want and taking care of ourselves so we can. I'll say one of the biggest insights for me when it comes to resilience and leadership has been understanding the art of surrender. I always thought it was about fight, flight, or whatever it is, fight, flight, or freeze people talk about. But there's a concept to me of just surrendering to the reality of our situations. A lot of my own frustrations came when I was bumping up against things that I didn't actually have the ability to control. So there's a concept called circle of influence versus circle of concern. And it talks about how we are most satisfied in our work when the things we are most concerned about are things we can influence. And so for a lot of it, whether it was a challenging boss or an external, environmental consideration, I would be really frustrated by something that ultimately I couldn't influence. And it was accepting reality doesn't always mean accepting it forever. You can acknowledge the current state without accepting it as the future and still work for change. But surrendering our own expectations in the near term and stop trying to fix everything. I sometimes felt like I was taking everything on, if that makes sense. Yeah. Rather than being more intentional about what am I taking on? And it should be things that I'm tasked with professionally and things that I am empowered to actually influence. That's not always the case. But I think that's an important component is understanding the art of surrender would be where I would probably start. But what about you? I love that. For me, I've really had to find the ways to compartmentalize what's happening from work life to personal life. And as someone who's been working from home for more than a decade, I think I thought I knew how to do that pretty well. And then I realized over the last 4 years, I absolutely don't know how to do that at all. And so it's been something that I've really worked on. When I'm sitting at my desk, I am very present and mindful of work and the decisions that need to be made and helping lead my team through change. But when I step away from the desk, I've really started to actually, Seth, you've taught me some things around putting your phone on, turning off those notifications and being the person who checks the phone versus the phone checking you in some ways. And also just things like mindfulness. And for me, that's, I find that through fitness, through working things out on a spin bike. And I've integrated more meditation into my life as a result.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a great like theme there around self-care, which is it's not just what you do, it's what you do or don't let in. And so yeah, like I don't have notifications on my Slack or on my email. My phone is on do not disturb 24 hours a day. I still check it, but to your point, I check my phone. My phone doesn't check me. And I'll say the broader self-care stuff is super important. I've been very lucky in my life. I'm able to invest in that lately. So a lot of folks know I've gone on like mindfulness leadership retreats. I do meditation with as much frequency as I can. And I really focus on being present. One of the lessons for that I've learned that I picked up from a book by Tim Ferriss, it was in Tribe of Mentors, was this idea of when I'm 80 years old, how much would I pay for this moment? And so I think about that when I like give my daughter a bath or carry her to bed. And it's like, man, when I'm 80 years old, like what would I pay to carry my daughter to bed one more time? And then on the flip side, when I'm 80 years old, what would I pay for like one more Zoom lunch or like one more late night email? And like the reality is I wouldn't. And so it doesn't mean I don't make space for that sometimes when I have to, but it helps keep my like priorities a little bit in check, and it empowers me a little bit more to put up more boundaries than maybe I had earlier in my career.
Yeah. You've brought up this importance of prioritization now a couple times in this conversation. And I want to take us actually like a slight sidestep here, because I think that in moments of uncertainty, every decision that we make as leaders in the workplace feels like it's really high stakes. And all of these things are changing around us, whether it's driven by, the election and politics, or the change that AI is bringing to our campuses, or something, completely different. And so whether it's relying on like our instinct or data or experience, right? Like there's just so much pressure to make decisions faster and to make them better.
Yeah.
And I think like the two things that I feel like, especially this year, the two things that I've just like kind of leaned into has been emphasizing the importance of prioritization and just, like trying not to get bogged down. I'm a details person, and I can very easily get stuck in the trees. So it's like zooming out to look at that forest and focusing on the things that are like mission critical, what is important, not immediate. That's one of our values at our company. And like, it's something I try and do better at every day. And then the second is that decisions do not have to be final. And I've tried to shift my mindset to decisions are iterative. And now that I've taken that approach, right, it allows me to do decision making as like more a series of these small winnable games versus like, and like as a result, like I'm breaking up these big decisions into these smaller steps. It's allowing me to adjust when new information becomes available. And it removes, I'm an Enneagram 3, like it removes the pressure for me to get it 100% right from the start.
I think there's so much that is amazing about that, and understanding how much decision making is much more fluid. I've been working with one institution that's facing a pretty big strategic question, and in conversations with them, their president talked about like what kind of off ramps can we put in this decision. He's like, because like we're aligned on the direction, but we don't know how it's going to go, and we don't want to feel like we're making this like total like this like final decision that can never be changed. And it was really great about like strategically, if this is the right decision now, let's make it, but let's also have proper off-ramps and proper times to check in and look at decisions more fluidly. I think in general, that's just fantastic. A couple of those I would share is I had a great therapist once that talked to me about the internal dialogue I was doing. So I was talking to her about work, and I was talking about like fighting for a campaign concept that my internal stakeholders wanted to kill, and it was such a battle. And she's like, you were like talking like you're at war. And she's like, when you use that language in your head about fighting and killing and battling, it's like, that is not productive for keeping in context exactly what you're actually doing. And it really, I had to like let go and say like, okay, like this is not the right approach, and like really work on rewiring the way I even spoke to myself internally. That really changed a lot. The other one I would share too is I've really learned when it comes to decision making, there's two paths. Like one is I agree we should be making smaller decisions faster and be unafraid about not knowing if it's the right thing. Just make the decision, gather more data, and then revisit it again. And then on the flip side, for other items, I also found that like time is also a tool. And sometimes that like you can just wait some things out. So it's like if you're having a challenge, if you're having a challenge with your boss about the direction that it's in, like that doesn't have to be solved today. Like that is the thing that's like, just accept that current reality and like let it play out. I find that I try so much when it comes to conflict to strive for resolution because it makes me feel safe. And in turn, it's like, well, that means as a leader, I'm making a decision for myself, not necessarily for the team or the organization. And sometimes like we can live in the ambiguity sometimes, and that's actually okay. So it's also like understanding the motivations where it's like, am I doing this for myself, or am I doing this as a steward to the organization or to the team? It's a helpful question sometimes to step back and ask.
Yeah. Well, this idea of like safety and feeling supported, maybe let's like pull that thread for a second, because I think fostering resilience like also starts with creating a very psychologically safe environment where people can operate in a place where they are comfortable expressing their concerns and uncertainties. So as we as leaders are building our resilience, we also have to make sure that we are fostering that same resilience in our teams and nurturing it. And I think that leaning, like my team often knows, I say like, I'm transparent to a fault sometimes, but I would rather be on that end of the spectrum where there's open communication and trust and psychological safety than the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, totally. I also think like when you think through it too, like how you make yourself open and available to your team is a really important question. And this has been a hard one for me to learn. For a long time in my career, thought it was like every one-on-one is the like, how are you doing? And it was all emotional. And I realized that, like, I can't actually always control how someone on my team is feeling. But I was structuring my one-on-ones as if that was my job. And my job is to provide, clear direction, strong resources, and support that hopefully results in an environment where they're feeling a certain way. But realistically, like, we all bring to work things that are personal and things that we're going through in our lives. And I was starting with the how are you feeling, I actually think in hindsight was like a hindrance, not a help overall. And that was something that I've thought about over time and really revisited. How can I be emotionally available while also making sure that it's productive? Beyond availability for the team, again, I think one of the big lessons in building resilience is being available to ourselves. And I think that really comes down to slowing down. That's probably, I don't know about you, Mallory, my biggest takeaway for folks today is like, with everything that we're facing, what is within our own influence and our control? And what we can control is our environment, the language we use with ourselves, our kindness to ourselves, and the kind of inputs that I think ultimately allow us to show up in a better or different way. So almost always when it comes to like, how can I be resilient externally for others, I think it starts with how can I care more internally for myself.
I love that. We at the end of the day, like, we're all we got, right? So we have to take care of ourselves if we think we are going to properly take care of our teams. And that's where I was saying, like, for me, it's all about making sure I work things out on that spin bike, or, I have that time. Like, I'm a reality TV junkie. I love watching my Survivor and Big Brother. That like brings me peace mentally, gives me a way to escape. So I think you're spot on about that, Seth. How are you finding those opportunities?
I think I'm still exploring some of those. In a lot of ways, I think I have the list. What I don't have is necessarily the prioritization in my schedule to make space for them. So meditation, walking, meetings, taking more meetings when I have car rides. Like a lot of times I probably have 2 to 4 or 5 like catch-up calls a week. And I used to just do those in between meetings. And I found, like, can I cluster those to twice a month and do them in the car when I'm driving to a client, or can I take it on a walk? And so to me, it's an iterative process of both knowing what to do, but then finding better ways to do it. And I'm definitely still in the like improve my deployment chapter of this process. But ultimately, I think the other thing too is, even in building resilience, it starts with thinking about like, where I am today is just fine and okay. We can always strive to improve ourselves, but we don't want to imply that we need to fix ourselves. And that was a lesson that I've learned over the course of my career. It's not about fixing, it's about accepting and loving. And again, the way that we show up for ourselves, hopefully, will be the best tool to reflect how we can show up for others.
Another one of those company values here is progress before perfection. I'd be lying if I, didn't say, like, I've been applying that to my life outside of work too. Like, it's about progress, especially in this time of what feels just like, constant change. And so instead of waiting for like, what is perfect, it's just like acknowledging that step forward every day is all about progress. I feel very Adam Grant, like channeling Adam Grant right now.
Yeah. I love it. Well, I think, for folks listening, just know that we're thinking of you. I know it's a challenging and divisive and complicated time. And so whatever you're going through, we're rooting for you.
Exactly. And I should mention, starting this Thursday, we're launching the final Pulse Check series of the year. This couldn't be more timely. We'll be diving into reclaiming free speech, democracy, and discourse on college campuses in a post-2024 election America. Dr. J. Cody Nielsen, host of After Further Consideration, will lead discussions with guests specializing in civic and public policy, identity-based issues, and the higher ed landscape. So regardless of the election outcome this week, we know that this moment is pivotal and it is going to set the tone for the next decade in higher ed. Now, 1 week from today, I'll be at AMA in Vegas. Last week, we announced Enrollify's After Hours Party, which is happening Sunday night right after the AMA opening reception. We've taken over Stadia Bar, Caesars iconic sports bar, which is very conveniently located right near the conference center. This is your chance to meet some of your favorite Enrollify creators. Come hang out with us. Enjoy drinks on us. We are here to celebrate you, our amazing Enrollify community. We're going to have Sunday night football on the big screens. I hear there's a highball cart, and it's just going to be good vibes kicking off AMA in Vegas style. Now, you do need to RSVP, so we'll drop the link in the show notes or just shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. Either way, can't wait to meet you and see you there. My new goal is to take 50 selfies at AMA with listeners. So y'all, you're listening. If you're at AMA, come find me. Got to get to 50.
I like it. All right.
See you soon. Bye, everybody. The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.